TA with MK. It's TA with MK. Alright, today's video I'm just going to be very upfront with you. I have good news and I have bad news. It's always a good idea to start with the bad news, so here we go. The bad news is Bitcoin is doing nothing.
Stranger.
The good news is Bitcoin is doing nothing. No, but seriously, it's like being in the longest drive-through line in the world. You wait for 15 minutes, have a conversation with yourself. Should I keep waiting? Should I go somewhere else? You've already waited this long. You want to see it through. Another 15 minutes goes by. You have the conversation again. Should I go somewhere else? Is McDonald's really even that good? I've already been here this long, though. I'm not a quitter. I'm not going to give up. And on and on and on. And eventually you die. That being said, we are the captain of this ship, so we're going to see it through. If you're liking the content, please remember to like and subscribe, and let's jump into today's video. Now, in the grand scheme of things, it's not really a big shock that Bitcoin's being quote-unquote boring. We've kind of talked about this in previous episodes that on the weekly, we're starting to turn a little bullish, which gives me some, short to midterm, I guess, hopium, some bullishness. However, weekly time frames take a long time to develop. Like, we're just now putting in some, negative momentum on the MACD. We are near the bottom. We're below a resistance level on the RSI. I'm looking for us to hopefully break above, retest, and then maybe we can push higher. We also have this trend line to contend with on the RSI. The stochastic is what is probably the most bullish. It just crossed into the purple zone, and it is curled up. However, on the weekly, this could take weeks, hence weekly for it to develop. So if we go over to the daily chart, that's the one that's really, really boring, right? I mean, we've had this push up. Let me get my paintbrush back out. We had this push up. Rejection, right? At the top of my red zone. Retraced a little bit. Pushed up. Rejection at the bottom of the zone. Lower high. Big retrace, right? Kind of did the whole thing all over again just to get rejected. Down. Once again. Lower high. So do we do this all over again and push clear back down to the bottom of the range? Potentially. That's something I mentioned yesterday that I am looking for potentially somewhere between, 35, 37K for a bounce. But it wouldn't surprise me if we bounce sooner, like I also mentioned. We have this low, we have this higher low. It's trying to confirm a higher low, but because it put in a lower high, it's more or less just kind of creating a triangle of consolidation, and we should see a move coming soon. Woohoo, groundbreaking, right? No, seriously though, there's a lot of things going on in the world that obviously are influencing stocks at the moment. So the Ukraine situation with Russia, the Fed stuff with the inflation and all that kind of stuff. But even that being said, just from a pure TA perspective, take everything else and chuck it out the window. This is something that the market needed anyway. Like it's been bullish and going up, for about the last 2 years, really. Bitcoin, that is. And then, of course, the altcoins and stuff have been following it. And it needs some time to cool down. It needed a healthy retrace. It got a decent one when it topped out last year in April. And then, pulled back to 30K. And then, of course, most recently, this last year in November, we pulled up again. But in the grand scheme of things, when you look at some of the previous bull runs, I mean, they needed time to cool off. Now, are we at the top? Not necessarily. We don't know that yet. I mean, 2013 had 2 tops. Are we just doing this? Although we've already kind of done it. We already kind of did do that. Everybody's been pointing to the fact that we didn't get a blow-off top. But history doesn't have to repeat itself in that sense. And Bitcoin was such a small asset back then, especially back here in 2013, 2014, and it still wasn't really that big in, 2017, 2018. It didn't take a whole lot when the hopium and when the FOMO kicked in for it to blow off, right? It didn't take a lot of money to influence this type of a curve. That would take a lot more money, so I don't think we'll ever see that again. Just that's my personal opinion. I don't think we see this ever again. But that also doesn't mean that we're just going to do this, where we bump back down. We could come all the way back down, and test 19, 20K. That's been in the cards for quite some time. But that being said, the weekly has some signs that are somewhat bullish. They're going to take some time to develop. The monthly, we'll focus on that tomorrow. It doesn't necessarily look as good as the weekly. So what does that tell me? Well, that we could have some short-term upside if you're patient. But more midterm to long-term, we may be, more or less just going to be going sideways or seeing small pumps up, bigger waves down. Small pumps up, bigger waves down. And as traders, we just want to take advantage of each wave the best that we can. We also want to give a quick update on Bitcoin dominance. Now, this is the 4-hour chart. This is what I mentioned yesterday that I've been tracking as far as getting an idea of which way the money's going to flow next. As you guys know, I tell you every day, Bitcoin dominance, if it's going up, that's bad for altcoins. If it's going down, that's good. It really is just as simple as that. Now, when it's going up and Bitcoin's going up, it just means that that's not bad for altcoins per se. It just means that more money's flowing into Bitcoin than the altcoins. So the altcoins may just be kind of consolidating, going sideways. Some will come up with Bitcoin. You know, anytime Bitcoin goes up, usually the altcoins can at least get drug up somewhat with it, right? So it's not always bad when this goes up for altcoins, but it's generally not good, and especially if this is going up and Bitcoin itself is going down. But it's always good for altcoins when this is going down. So we're in this upward rising channel, rising wedge, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, let's take away some of what we got here. We're nearing the bottom, which could either be a support bounce, which would not be good for altcoins in the short term. But what I'm really hoping for, since from a percentage standpoint, this is a pattern that has a 68% chance of breaking to the downside at some point. So can it bounce again? Of course it can. It's already had 1, 2, 3, 4 touches. What we really want to see for altcoins, at least short term, for some potential upside, would be for this to break down, bearishly retest, and then start to trend lower. Now, granted, we'd probably find support, back here in some of these levels, but we could get some good short-term altcoin trading if this happens. Here is EGLD, or Elrond, that we discussed yesterday. I was mentioning that this pattern, or this price action, just looks good to me. It previously had this downward trend line that it eventually broke out, created this little W, which was a low, but then a higher low, and then it broke this resistance and went on a good run. It has a very similar pattern, similar price action going on right now. It had this low, then it broke out, came up, put in a higher low than this low. Of course, Bitcoin has to cooperate. We all know that. My entry that I couldn't remember yesterday is actually 142.98. So, briefly last night I was in profits. Now, obviously, I'm just a couple percents down. But that was my 15% entry. So the plan now would be to see if we get a pullback with Bitcoin to the strongest level of support, which would be between 115-ish and 120-ish. And that would be where you'd want to, or where I would add a 35%. Option 2 is to ride the 15% that I'm in already up until the bottom of this red zone at around 190. Take all the profits and then just kind of see what it does. Because if it can then break this resistance at some point and retest, then I would reopen all over again at 15%. So eventually, over the next coming days, I will put out a DCA video kind of how I use the 15, 35, 50 technique. Obviously, retrace buys are what I focus on. However, breakout, I also breakout trade as well. But breakout for me, is more of on a 4-hour time frame. I like to see it break resistance. I like to see it close at least 1 or 2, candles on the 4-hour after it retests back above that resistance. And then I enter at 15%. And then at that point, I find levels above that I can then use to do the same thing all over again. Take profits on the way up. It breaks the next one, re-add to the position or reopen at 15% all over again. If it retraces back down and hits the support level again, after I've added 15% up here, then this would become my 35% and so on and so forth. But I will put out an in-depth video here in the next few days that kind of explains that strategy a little bit better. But just wanted to update you on EGLD. It's sitting at around 140. My entry was around 143, so about as boring as Bitcoin. Quick update on QTUM from yesterday. Nothing's happening with it. It's just chilling. My entry option, though, or at least the one I'm looking for, would be either a break of this support while it's still inside of this large falling wedge, a break of this green box, and then I would enter 15% down here at just around $5. That would be entry option 1. Entry option 2 would be if it breaks this resistance and comes back down and tests this support at around 550. I know that's where it's at now, but I want to see it break this trend line, because I feel like that would be the first bullish sign, and then you get to 15% on the retrace, potential retrace. Option 3 for 15% would be if it breaks out, breaks this red resistance, and then we look for a 4-hour candle to close on this retest, and we open around here at about 690. So those are the 3 things I'm looking for. We'll keep you posted. Also, a quick update on my 3S short token on KUCOIN that I was mentioning in yesterday's video. This is AXS or Axes. I even sent out a Twitter or a post on my Twitter account last night that said if this was to break this yellow zone, then I was going to get in on the retest, either the top or the bottom, and time that with a Bitcoin pullback. Bitcoin, obviously, it did pull back, but this didn't ever really, it moved barely. It barely poked its head up, but it didn't break above the yellow. So this was my key level here. I wanted to see this break above that, and then I would have been looking for an entry on the retrace, or the retest, I mean. I didn't get it, so it's still on my radar because it's just hanging out, and Axes has just been really boring. This is the short token, like I said, so if this is going up, that means that the actual price of Axes is going down. So this was just a token I introduced in yesterday's video, or a concept about trading when the market goes down as well. So each day I like to show you some of the tokens that I'm watching for if the market goes up or if it goes down. So that's the Axes update, which is really no update. And then I actually wanted to go over 2 other coins quickly that I am watching, especially if Bitcoin can give us some short-term upside. DOT is one of those coins that just seems like it never does anything. So, but it's also a safe coin. And sometimes I like being in these coins that I can tell they have upside, but they don't have a ton of risk to the downside. The reason I'm tracking DOT is on the daily time frame here. It does look like it's trying to put in this double bottom, right? Which the way that a double bottom gets confirmed is when the neckline, so this is the last high before it created this low, right? And then it created this high here, and then this is the double bottom. So this zone right here is the neckline for it. But then there's also this big trend line that has 1 touch here, a touch here, 3, 4. So it's a very valid trend line, and it keeps trying to poke its head above it. I would want to see it, of course, poke above it and close the body of a daily candle above it before I even considered entering. But the reason why this one's on my radar is it just doesn't look like it has a ton of downside. If the market recovers at all, there's a good chance DOT could see some at least decent upside, at least up to here, to the $20 range. And then if it were to break out of that, retest this red zone, then we could see it come up and test this next little zone of resistance at around $3. So keep DOT on your radar. And then the last one I wanted to go over was BPRO, B-E-P-R-O. That is a Web 3.0 coin. I know there's a lot of hype on Web 3.0. But the reason I like this one from a TA perspective is it had this big falling wedge back here previously from like March through June of last year. It put in a big double bottom and then broke out and was able to have some pretty good upside. It's kind of doing the same thing. It's in another falling wedge. It has this double bottom. You could kind of see that this area that previously was resistance and then it went on a big run has acted as support once, twice, 3, 4, and it's sitting on the top of it. So, I mean, obviously, if Bitcoin has a large pullback and it loses this support, it's not going to be a good coin to trade, but it's got a lot lower risk than most coins because you could put a stop loss, 10 or 15% below this major zone of support. And if it gets hit, you'd obviously want to be out of the coin anyway because there's a chance it could just bearish retest the bottom and then, see downside to the next levels of support. But what I'm looking for right now is for it to break out of this zone or trend line I have above it, and then retrace back, and I'd look for 15% entry, basically where it's at now, but kind of similar to QTUM. I want to see it break out first. Or if it could break this key level, then I would get in on a break of that, retest 15% there, and ride that up to the next zone of resistance. So keep BPRO on your radar. And I think the biggest takeaway from today's video is when things are boring or not a whole lot is happening, you don't always have to be in a trade. Go outside, hang out with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your mom or your dad or your grandma. Do something other than stare at charts all day because there's going to be better times ahead. We'll have more clarity coming soon. So remember that sometimes being in no trade is the best trade. That being said, thank you for joining me on TA with MK. My name is McKay. Remember to like and subscribe and have a good day. It's TA.